means that the people there are ignored as they are ignoring the whole world and rejecting whatever the UN has been able to put together. As the African National Congress, building on our own in the manner that we've always been saying, that we are quite willing to work with our enemies. We'd always hope that the Israel people will understand us within that context. But it's quite clear, to murder children and to murder women is an easy thing for them to do. To build up apartheid walls, for them it's easy for them to maintain themselves. We are saying, Palestinian community, the African National Congress is behind you. We'll put up every effort and put in every energy fearlessly to show you our support, because there's no way we can encourage that apartheid be reinvented within the Israel community, dividing you from where you are. This annexation is about abuse of power. It's about trampling of human rights, trampling of your own rights. And we are saying as South Africans, we stand behind you. Amanda.
Away you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Nyami Booi. We are live. We've had an input from Comrade Nyami Booi, who may well come in shortly again with additional input, also responding to various comments and questions. For those who may have missed it, Comrade Nyami Booi is a very, very well-known South African activist who was involved in SAICO. He was the deputy president of SAICO, which essentially was the reformation of the African National Congress Youth League after the unbanning, towards the unbanning in 1990, the ANC was unbanned in South Africa. So Comrade Nyami Booi, we're really honored to have you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Then of course we have the Ambassador of Palestine. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. And then we have the Honorable Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Deputy Minister Alvin Botes, who will address the topic of the day. This gathering today on this webinar is very symbolic at a time of COVID-19, where we're all very careful in not being spreaders of COVID-19, so we're doing it online. I'm sure all of us, in fact, all of us definitely would love to have very, very big full halls and massive demonstrations to resist the annexation of Palestinian land by the occupying authority of Israel. But considering COVID-19, we have to be more cautious, unfortunately, Ambassador. So we'll just have to accept this. We're not armchair activists, actually. We are activists, all of us. But in this context, we'll have to do what we can. And that is why we've gathered here. We want to thank very much the Deputy Minister for availing himself, Comrade Nyami Booi, and yourself, Ambassador. Today's topic is the fearless show of solidarity by South Africa towards Palestine. We've seen incredible inroads and extreme improvements on our more and more firm and consistent position in Palestinian solidarity. And I think Comrade Alvin Botes will elaborate on that. We must mention, before he even speaks, that we were absolutely thrilled to hear his input at the UN recently. And in fact, we can dare say that all his utterances have been in line with all the ANC resolutions and have even tested the boundaries of them in showing absolute, undeniable and fearless solidarity with the Palestinian people. So now for the viewers on Facebook, on Zoom and media, I'll hand over to Deputy Minister Alvin Botes. Thank you so much. Sorry, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Bram, for your brief introduction. I think it is important for us to firstly probably contextualize the concentric circles upon which the South African policy perspectives are actually based on. One, how we should appreciate that at the core of our foreign policy agenda, Bram, it's of course your African solidarity amongst African states to augment the role that the African Union play and to ensure that ultimately the 55 states in Africa are united to ensure that we bring about that inclusive prosperity, probably outlined in Agenda 2063. The second pillar, equally important, of course, is solidarity as it relates to the global South, and the question of your developing countries, your solidarity with the oppressed people is a pivotal pillar located within that thematic approach. We'll obviously have to examine the role that international progressive organizations at the multilateral level have played, such as your non-aligned movement chaired by Azerbaijan, as it relates to the struggles of the Palestine people. The third pillar, we have to speak today about global governance. We have to examine the role of the United Nations as a premium multilateral organ in the world today. But of course, Bram, you cannot speak about the United Nations and not deeply reflect about the attitude of the United Nations Security Council, in particular, the conduct of the P5, which has a permanent presence at the level of the United Nations Security Council. And then, of course, we have to appreciate that the more industrialized, not developed nations have a key role to play, ensuring that we negate from the systematic underdevelopment and vulnerability of the global South. So your fourth pillar is, of course, your North-South cooperation. So those are what I call your four concentric pillars that underpins the South African policy perspective. But of course, Bram, what is the posture of the South African government as it relates to the plight of the Palestine people? We have been very consistent from the time that Nelson Mandela became the first democratic president, that we will always on the side of the vulnerable. So the South African policy perspective, our posture has at all times to err on the side of the oppressed, the poor, and the vulnerable. Those people, those societies that has not been given the privilege to have a basket of social justice and economic justice within their purview. We have to ask a number of questions in this debate today, and I'll provocatively pose it because I know my Excellency Ambassador of Palestine is present here today. We will have to examine three key questions, Bram. Firstly, is there unity amongst the Palestine people as it relates to what is the key denominator that result in their vulnerability? So is there a common sense amongst the Palestine people who is responsible for their oppression? But more importantly, Bram, is who is those within Palestine, within the neighboring countries of Palestine and in the broader Middle East and the West that are aiding and abetting the conduct of Israel as it relates to the destruction perpetuated against the state of Palestine. Lastly, is there unity amongst the key political formations in Palestine? So I think it's important that we look at what positive role Hamas, what positive role the PLO and Fatah and all other different movements can play. But my submission as South Africa, and Comrade Nyami Booi would probably relate to this matter, how we managed to destroy apartheid as a sin against humanity is not only through the internal mass struggle. It's not through only the defiance campaigns. A key pillar was to solidify international support as it relates to our struggle. And I think my submission is, apart from the state, we will have to be more aggressive by supporting organizations such as yours as a key role player, as a non-state actor within the broader sense of the word. The only key way to put a quite substantive diplomatic and political pressure on the state of Israel is through participation at a substantive level, Bram, of non-state actors. And I'm raising it because I have participated last week in the United Nations Security Council. I can confide to the world today that we had all 15 Security Council members without a disclaimer that have raised concerns about this impending annexation by Israel. And that, of course, Bram, includes the United States of America. Our posture in South Africa, that what is pivotal is not non-engagement with the state of Israel. We will have to come up with strategies and mechanisms to ensure that there is different means to engage the state of Israel. How the South African government and the South African leadership at that time under Nelson Mandela have engaged our colonial masters and your apartheid captains. South Africa democracy would not have been possible if we had assumed a role of non-engagement. And I think that is a very key message at a multilateral level that we would want to steer the discussion today. We are of course concerned about the emergence of what we call masculine type of politics that is centered on arrogance, that is centered on the denialist type of approach. And I must make a submission today, Bram, as a moderator, that I think South African leadership, and I'm saying leadership, I'm not only speaking about government, I'm speaking about all leadership within the state parameters. We should appreciate the fact that South Africa is a secular state, that we appreciate a sense of affinity to any religion. And I want to make the point, today as a deputy minister in South Africa, that I am a Christian, Bram, but I do not condone. My value system, my religion, do not in any way condone what is being perpetuated against the people of Palestine. In fact, my submission today is that it's actually an antithesis to all the value systems that person of Christian religious belief actually should stand for. And I'm raising that point given the debates that has been raised from very important figures within the South African government. So I thought that the position of government has been consistent on the question of Palestine. We have played our role as a participant of the African group. I think more needs to be done from Africa to make sure that we solidify African group perspective on the plight of the Palestinian people, given the fact that a country such as Egypt, which is part of Africa, has a pivotal role to play in stabilizing the situation in the Palestine. And we are elated as a South African government to have actually witnessed an outpouring of grief from civil society in South Africa and elsewhere in the world around this planned annexation, because planned annexation is exactly what the South African government today, Bram, are dealing with around the 1913 Land Act. It's about dispossession of people's land. It's about devaluing of a people. So the struggle of the people of Palestine have coherence and find expression within our own evident struggle today. So thank you very much, Bram.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. It is always wonderful to have political leaders who have support and a mandate from their party, but who are also activists. And I think that energy that politicians can bring into the foray is really, really helpful. I want to just share with the panelists today that there was a press conference held today, which was actually quite groundbreaking in that today the AIC the EFF, Al Juma Party, the Good Movement, headed by Dilo and Brett Heron, the Al Juma Party, as well as the NFP and the ANC, represented by Mjuma Nana, who was sent by the Deputy Secretary General's office to present, all shared a podium together in combining their statements of opposition to the annexation of the Palestinian land by Israel. So that was really great to see the multi-party parliamentary level support that the government is actually receiving, even from parties that don't agree with the governing party of the day on other issues. There seems to be a growing consensus, I think, motivated by this colonial project of further annexation. I would like to ask Comrade Nyami Booi, from his incredible experience, it's fun to talk about youth when you're a bit older, because you were one of the outstanding youth leaders in your day. I would just like to ask Comrade Nyami Booi around the efforts made in his time to promote awareness and solidarity with South Africa during apartheid, and how the youth of today may get some guidance from you before coming back to Deputy Minister Botes. Thank you. Sorry, Abir, can you unmute your mic, Comrade Nyami Booi? Yes, there we go.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that South Africans are quite worried about is that the response of the Israelites, just at the moment when there's a pandemic, is so inhuman. It borders on what people are saying, total lack of how you review or you look at human life. So it would be very much important to highlight and to be able to show that we are doing everything to fight the pandemic, while the Palestinian community are confronted with the big response from Israel and the Trump administration that doesn't care about human rights. South Africans are united behind the call, and South Africans have been in and out to go and show solidarity with the Palestinian community. Not because of any other thing, because when President Mandela laid the foundation and showed how reconciliation could work between communities and negotiation could work between communities to resolve differences, this is what our visitors have always been encompassing. Meet us, talk to us. And we think in the humbleness of the Palestinian community, it has shown it quite a lot. For all these years, patiently trying to persuade different forces to be able to rise to the moment and give support to the Palestinian struggle. It doesn't stop there. It does. I mean, I know when I visited Israel and I visited the Palestinian community, we tried to persuade them that the best route to understand the two-state is to spend time with the Palestinian community, understand the question of unity. We have been working, all of us, around the clock, as even South Africans, to encourage the Palestinian community to be more united, because continued death of children and continued death of women, and the detention that is taking place, long detentions of different comrades who put up sacrifice and who are trying to show to the world where we're standing or where the Palestinian community is. It's just not acceptable, because in our own experience, when you use brutality and you use harsh laws to confront and try to neutralize communities, you'll never be able to succeed. That's why we follow the route of being able to reconcile and be able to work together. And we're seeing, even on this particular day, it will never stop building walls to try to separate communities. The best route, because they've got the same needs as the different people there. So it's important that unity among communities be allowed. And the people of Palestine, the regime of Palestine, of Israel, must be able to unite with the people and talk to them. It's a very inhuman times when there's a pandemic and you continue trying to oppress people, take their rights away and make it very difficult for them to look after their own children. That's what we say as South Africans. Then we'll do every other effort, as the Deputy Minister have shown, putting together, also been talking to Mandela himself. We've said that we're going to put our hands together, continue with the mobilization, and continue educating our people, making sure that we remain behind the Palestinian community and convince those that think that Israel is able to do something correct. We have gone there. I've been in Israel, I've been in Palestine, and I know the experience and the arrogance of the Israel administration in not listening to the Palestinian community. And as I say, it's more terrible when we all try to make sure that this invincible virus, the invincible enemy, is being defeated. The Palestinian community is being faced now with more than one enemy. Rather than focusing on the invincible enemy, COVID-19 is now confronted to confront equally in how to deal with the Israel problem. And that's what we have to say, South Africans.
Thank you so much, Comrade Nyami Booi. Again, for those of you who've just joined us, Comrade Nyami Booi is a very well-known former member of parliament as well, established in business, established in activism and in the African National Congress and the alliance structures. And so we're very honored to have him here today. Deputy Minister, you have alluded to something extremely important. And for us as Africa for Palestine, it's one of our primary mandates, and that is to work towards African unity on the issue of Palestinian solidarity, and also, essentially ensuring that the AU and African leaders are quite firm. I mean, we were quite thrilled and we are thrilled to note that that Palestine have an observer seat, I believe, at the AU, while Israel does not. And we know that there have been efforts to try get in and get legitimacy from the AU by the Israeli government. Recognizing the constraints you may have as a deputy minister, what advice could you give us in terms of increasing our solidarity efforts in the region?
Am I audible, moderator? Yes, no, thank you very much, Bram. Let me first start with a very profound statement made by the United Nations Secretary General, Monsieur Antonio Guterres, which said we are standing at this very moment at a watershed moment in the world, meaning that this type of conduct, Bram, flies in the face of the 1974 United Nations General Assembly, which have affirmed the unalienable right of Palestinian people and their right to their land. So there is already a formal decision as long back as 1974. So the solidarity, of course, firstly, I have made a indication. Remember, any struggle presupposes unity amongst the oppressed. So what is key and pivotal, it's of course the unity and solidarity amongst the people of Palestine, as it relates to what constitute their struggle, who is the motive forces, Bram, that is central in the execution of the struggle, and who is then at the objective level allies, those countries that are on the side of the vulnerable. What is the role of Jordan? What is the role of Turkey? What is the role of Saudi Arabia, etc.? And I think that type of strategic analysis is pivotal. And I'm raising it within the context that Palestine people have made deliberate and systematic concessions around land alienation. The original claim of land and what the Palestine people actually occupies today constitute less than 30% of originally of land that has been that is owned and that is domestically allocated and by the Palestine people. Of course, the African Union is a key multilateral organization. I mean, Bram, probably third after the non-aligned movement in stature, constituting representing 55 states. And paramount in our 2020 theme is silencing of the guns for inclusive and sustainable development in Africa. And I have given an indication that the challenges and insecurity in Palestine, insecurity in the Middle East, directly affects the security situation in Africa. We know, for example, from the conflict in Libya, the conflict in the Central African Republic, in large parts of the Horn of Africa, is because of a constellation of interests that has a pathway, of course, also in the Middle East. And our submission as South Africa, of course, it's to work tirelessly to ensure that at a multilateral level, we continue to engage the United States of America. We continue to engage the state of Israel as it relates to the plight of the people, but also as South Africa, Bram, we will have to have a very concerted effort to engage friendly nations in the Middle East as it relates to the plight of the Palestine people. What we cannot do and what we cannot agree at this discussion today is for things to remain the same. We cannot have the same posture what we have had in 1967. So we just can't have it. So what it requires is a new thinking, but upfront, and this is our submission as a South African government, upfront should be an insistence of a negotiated engagement around this matter. Of course, there is a reference point. The reference point relates to what was the decision of the United Nations as it relates to the land that the occupying force actually has accumulated. So there is formal decisions as a reference point, but we think this next decade should be underpinned by engagements with the state of Israel. It should underpin and try to stimulate the consciousness of the American people. We have done it in the past with the anti-apartheid struggle with the Black Caucus, when we had a very liberal and hostile United States in power, and the Black Caucus has been a key fora that have helped to raise the consciousness of the plight of the South African people. And our submission is that using your state and non-state actors, that should be the two instruments that we should agree from henceforward, using, of course, your embassies, your missions of like-minded nations to advance this noble cause. Because remember, the agenda of the Palestine people is the agenda of the entire progressive world. So missions of Palestine has a role to play, but all countries that have consistently voted with Palestine in the United Nations has equally a role to play. And I think it's important that moving forward from today, firstly, we should heighten political ferment that annexation should not take place. It should not take place, and we should engage like-minded countries. Of course, we have engaged the United Nations Security Council we are engaging, I think in session now is the United Nations Human Rights Council, so that there's a one message with different voices. And I think that is what we present as South Africa, and that is the message that we're taking to our brothers and sisters in Africa, Bram.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. I've got a question that's been received from a Palestinian activist in Palestine to Comrade Nyami Booi. The question is, how do you see emotionally what's happening in Israel in comparison to District 6 or other South African experiences?
Definitely, as one has grown in a squatter camp in Crossroad, and the experiences of discrimination and apartheid has been quite horrible, and has taken us quite a lot of years to be able to reconcile and talk to other groupings, either be white or what. But our experiences, as I said, when we were in Palestine and Israel, and trying to understand how can human at this age in the 21st century still see how to brutalize the life of other people. Because apartheid, they were quite determined, they had all the plans and all the plot. But at the end of the day, because of our unity and because of our determination, we defeated them. And today they are able to work with us since 1994 under the leadership of Mandela. And we are saying to the Palestinian community, Len, I've been there with you. I know how it has been and how much you've been able to put effort together to maintain resistance since the passed away of your leader, Arafat, President Arafat. You have shown your determination. You have not shifted away from your loyalty. And we have continuously saying to you, that loyalty and that hard work and that fearlessness is what has made us to be able to thrive over apartheid. And today we are seated high in the parliamentary seats, wherever we sit, and working with different opposition parties to ensure that your struggle doesn't end only with you. As our deputy minister is showing, it is continuously being endorsed throughout the world. Africa, where it is today, it is behind you because of our efforts, our determination, and our collaboration with you, because with your different, institutions that we have created that have been able to interact with us and have been able to give us information, it has been able to give us that confidence that victory is certain. It will never be postponed. Even if the invincible, the pandemic is hitting hard, but your own unity is what has been prime and quite important to us. We say apartheid regime and its own military, in the same military makeup that the Israel has, it tries to prove its own mightiness, but we continued, we defeated it because we were united amongst ourselves and were reliant on the whole world in our support. Your political message and how you present it, that the annexation is like what the apartheid regime has been conducting. It's a correct political message. Don't stop it. We're behind you. Apartheid has been condemned by the UN itself and right across the world. And that is the feeling that different people has around the world, even in South Africa, that we can't continue re-entrenching brutalities where human rights and rights of people are being abused and people are being killed for just being able to basically give us a place to be able to look after our own children. Those are very basic rights that any human being is looking for. And that's all we're asking for as ourselves as South Africans. And today, we are able to exercise our own political rights but we have never forgotten about you because you were with us during difficult times. You stood with us with the little or many resources that you had, you put into our struggle, and that will never be forgotten by us. We'll always stand with you. We'll always put in our effort. You remain our brothers. You remain our sisters, because your struggle is our struggle, and that's how we are mobilizing our people behind you. And that's been our experience, where human rights is being abused and where children are being killed by the mightiness of the military and enforcement of conscription of young children out of school to try to fight you as Palestinians has been ugliness of what I've ever seen. One would determine the Israeli military is committed to destroy you, but your own determination and your own unity has been able to sustain your struggle, has been able to keep your comrades alive within prisons that they have built to make sure that the struggle stop. The struggle has not been able to stop. And that's what it is always important. South Africa is behind you. Continue spreading your message. Amandla.
Awethu. Comrade, I have to say it's much more fun when you've got a whole of people inside and you can see the atmosphere, the singing and the activism. But you know, COVID-19 has made us make these compromises. So Amandla, comrade, Amandla. You can be louder now on Zoom. There's another question that's come through, sort of borderline statement. A Reverend Tulani has said that too often the contemporary state of Israel gets confused with the biblical state of Israel, overlooking the fact that Jesus and others were probably on land that wasn't geographically defined. He goes on to say that the state of Israel in biblical terms is quite different to the political entity headed by politicians who are subject to various forces, even corruption. DM, maybe if you want to just respond to that comment.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Bram. I think firstly, and more importantly, is what is the attitude of South Africa? And what is the attitude of the South African government? And what should be the attitude of all component members of the South African state? That includes government, it includes parliament, it includes the judiciary. And I'm raising it because in a state such as ours, we have due regard and respect for affinity and disaffinity as it relates to religious rights is concerned. So in South Africa, we don't look down on you because you are accustomed to specific religious practices. And I think that is what we call basic right within the human rights context, within the religious fraternity. And I'm raising it, Bram, because people in South Africa need to understand. We had an apartheid state that was premised on anti-communist posture and that have characterized the liberation movement as satanic in outlook. That was the characterization of the anti-apartheid movement. And the apartheid pioneers have equally used religion as an instrument, as a building block to justify their misconduct. So the first important issue is that we have an immediate past experience in South Africa. And my submission, Bram, is that the experience of the Palestine people is no different to the experience of the South African people. Firstly, they are denied their basic human rights in the land of birth, not in a land that they have occupied. So in as much as we speak today about the 1913 Land Act, the Palestinian people speak about their land that have been occupied for more than half a century. So the privileges that ordinary South Africans enjoy as it relates to religious freedom is virtually non-existent because of the occupying force as it pertains to the people of Palestine. In fact, Bram, 231 illegal Israeli settlements find refuge in Palestine land. And that 231 illegal settlements is on an everyday basis trying to transfer what they see as their superior ideological outlook at a religious and other level. So our experience in South Africa has immediate similarities with the people of Palestine. We do not submit that religion should be used to masquerade on the rights of people. No religion can be used to trample on the rights of vulnerable people. We have condemned, for example, the world, if we can recall, that there was a time when there was Nazism that was in the world, that wrongs has been in the past perpetrated against the people of Israel. And the world have condemned that. And what we are asking from Israel is to remember its own past where its people has been brutalized, that has been executed because of their affinity as it relates to being Israelis. And that is the same remembrance that we want to invoke today, that what is important is to get around a negotiation table so that we can dissect what is the common interest. Is the common interest to coexist with the people of Palestine? Is the common interest to coexist with the people of Palestine? If that is the case, it means it is a building block for negotiations and discussions. But what I am saying, what negates from this very noble cause, which Nelson Mandela have actually steered in South Africa, is masculine politics, underpinned by arrogance, finding expression in relation to right-wing nationalism elsewhere in the world. And that's why we have said to South Africa that what will be noble from our discussion on the 1st of July 2020 is for us to steer the people of Palestine and the people of Israel to sit around a table and to find one common point of entrance or of convergence. That is the building block for a more certain future, for a more prosperous Palestinian state, and also for a more prosperous state of Israel.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. I mean, I'm reminded of a fellow board member of Africa for Palestine, Professor and Comrade Farid Isak, who, when he was appointed by Nelson Mandela as Commissioner for Gender and Ethics, once remarked that, tell me it's your religion, that's fine. Tell me it's your belief, that's fine. But don't tell me it's okay to beat your wife. And ultimately, we have human rights, and those human rights are far-reaching. And I think we are very familiar as South Africans of the tactics of using biblical quotations or religious rhetoric to justify the unjustifiable. The Afrikaners or the Dutch, when they first arrived here, had infamously used a text in the Bible written, "The dark people of Canaan were born to serve," and used that as justification for Bantu education, saying, well, look, the Bible says people who are dark are not meant to do anything other than serve. So the use and the abuse of religious doctrines to justify oppression of another people is very familiar to us. And I think that the Deputy Minister very clearly touched on that and articulated that we won't allow the matter, and I dare say, to be reduced to a religious issue. We know religion is important, but human rights should be a common denominator across all religions and all peace-loving people who believe in treating neighbors and brothers like each other. I think most religious institutions have that kind of belief. Colleagues, I'm mindful of the time, and I think you've given a lot of time for the solidarity here. There are one or two other messages, but I think we're familiar with the slogan, nothing about us without us. So if I may ask the Ambassador of Palestine just to give a little input. We understand that this is all about Palestine that we're doing here. So really, Ambassador, just a brief input around the good things we've done as a country and our government, and the things that you'd like us to see do more of, but not too long. Thanks so much, Ambassador.
Well, thank you, Bram. Thank you, comrades. Thank you, Deputy Minister. Well, I can't be very short taking into consideration what have been said, because, like, for example, everything that has been said on the multilateralism and all these issues needs to be discussed really thoroughly, because it's about Palestinians. I do believe that no one on earth can understand the plight of the Palestinians as the South Africans, because they have been in the same place just recently, 25 years ago. So the plight of the Palestinian did not start today by the annexation, or it starts long time ago, 1948, when Israel occupied 70–80% of the land of Palestine and uprooted around 700,000 people from their homeland and scattered them in refuge. These 700,000 people are now 7 million still scattered in refuge without having the right even to think to return. So if we are going to talk about the engagement, as Comrade Botes says, yes, we have engaged in a peaceful process with Israel because we are a peace-loving nation. No one wants to see their kids dying. No one wants to live in despair. That's why we gave our hands to the Israelis, and we shake our hands in peace for peace in 1994. So that to engage in a peaceful process. The equation is easy. We wanted that equation to take place, live and let others live. Unfortunately, after 25 years of engaging in negotiation, sometimes bilateral, sometimes took the shape of multilateral, and I'm sure that you are aware of such process. Actually, we gain nothing. On the contrary, we were losing our land on daily basis. We were losing the souls of our humans on daily basis. We lost almost everything. Now we are facing another catastrophe of the annexation that will grab another more 30% out of the 22% that we agreed to have our state on. And the Israelis also agreed. But unfortunately, they have their own expansionist colonial regime and mindset that won't even allow us to breathe even. So it's important for South Africa, it's important for progressive countries, it's important for all peace-loving countries to stand up for their principles now, to stand up and to back Palestine in their demand. As I said, the equation is very easy, just to live and let others live. It's nothing more than that. And the baseline is obvious. It's the peace process, the international legitimacy, the UN Charter, the Rome Statute. That's it. We are not demanding other than the international legitimacy so that we can sit together and we can start a meaningful negotiation process. We have been negotiating only for the sake of negotiations for 25 years, and we gained zero sum. I think that the Israelis need to be advised by the international community that there is something in life called win-win situation. I think it's not found in their terminology. That's why I think they have to be educated that there is something in the multilateralism, there is something that can be done so that everyone can enjoy their inalienable right in self-determination and in having a state. Unfortunately, in such a distinct time, while the international community is standing shoulder by shoulder in solidarity, facing the pandemic of the coronavirus, Israel was very busy setting a record in home demolition, killing Palestinians, confiscating land, forming a unity government after 3 elections that took place in 1 year, just to announce their more intention of making annexation and making war plans. Unfortunately, this is what happens on a daily basis for the Palestinians. What we are expecting, actually, I was thrilled, and my people were thrilled in saying all the South African people standing behind Palestinians, especially with all these statements that has been said by the Chief Justice and the Israeli government on annexation. We cannot expect more solidarity and more support from any country as has been shown by the South African people. These past times showed the Palestinians that South Africans stand for their principles. They are supporting Palestine. Even when it comes of Palestine and religion, Palestine comes first, and they stand for their principles. They stand for their constitution, and really, this thrills us. What we need is to see mobilization on the level of mass mobilization here in South Africa, educating the students about Palestine more, educating the young more about Palestine, because it's very important as we are witnessing some older generation who knows everything because of the relationship with the PLO and the ANC in the past, and we have a new generation who are still fragile about, they are blindly support Palestine, but we need them to know more about Palestine so that they are not turning into floating boats, let's say. And what we need from South Africa on the international forum is to mobilize African countries as they are chairing the African Union, and they have the leverage to move with the African countries, especially taking into consideration that Palestine now is losing some grounds in the African continent on the multilateralism, and the African and the UN Security Council have been very vocal on that, and of course we count on your support and in your assistance on this. As for the engagement, I think that it's an important moment now. I think it's the momentum, not only for progressive countries. We have been witnessing also major support from EU countries that we never thought that they might stand up now against the Israeli annexation. I think that we need to make use of this momentum that is happening now. For example, European countries were waving or having maybe diplomatic and political sanctions against Israel. Let's make use of this momentum. Let's work together on this momentum. What brought apartheid into an end in the past was that they made use of the right moment, and everyone line from the international community, and put diplomatic, economic, political sanctions on the apartheid South Africa. So that's what put an end to it. I think this momentum is approaching now for Palestine, and I think this is what we need to focus on. Again, we can't be more proud of the deeply rooted friendship between Palestine and South Africa, between PLO and ANC, and our gratitude for all the alliances here in South Africa, the ANC, the Communist Party, COSATU, everyone who stood and issued statements in support of Palestine. Thank you so much for your support. We can't count on friends as you more, and Amandla.
Colleagues, I just want to throw in a little comment. We live in a country where we really value our constitution, our hard fought for rights in this country. But we also live in a country where our overwhelming solidarity and support and understanding of the Palestinian situation, without at all encouraging or trying to bring the panelists into the discussion, because I understand you all not private citizens, you're representing various structures or so on. But it is quite heartwarming to know, Ambassador, that we're in a country where even the Chief Justice himself is not above the law, and our people on social media, civil society, even the ruling party of the country is able to criticize somebody if they indicate a blind support of the state of Israel using even religious argument. So I think, Ambassador, we are really close to you, and I think we're in a we're very honored to have you here, and very proud of our deployees and our government who are increasingly showing that practical support that the ruling party resolved to provide. Colleagues, may I ask one final round of inputs from the panelists, starting with the Deputy Minister, then Comrade Nyami Booi, and then maybe a final remark from the Ambassador. Just very short, because I'm mindful of the time of people. Some indicated they were having time constraints. But one thing before, Abir, are there any questions that I have missed or comments that you think need to be raised?
No, we just want to say to the Ambassador that we, as South Africans and the African National Congress and the different parties in our country, are behind the struggle of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people must continue to do the best they want. We have got, and we're supporting them. Their experience is our experience. Their blood is our blood. And there's nothing more than that, that whatever effort we're putting together and whatever effort they're putting together to fight for sanctions, we're applying our mind and we're busy engaging into those issues. We are really doing our best. Our government that we have put together in South Africa is behind the Palestinian people. And the Israelites, with the Americans, know that we don't support where human rights are being abused. We are in solidarity with people of the oppressed because we've gone through that particular experience and we felt what it is when people are being oppressed by brutal regimes, and when people use military and negotiating and resolving differences. We're behind the Palestinian community. And those that are in detention, Ambassador, tell them that South Africans are united behind them, will do everything to be able to resolve the struggle. And we could fully feel it that it's not long that they will be able to come out of those prisons and enjoy their life and time with their own children. We have had experiences of those things, and we have confronted those problems. But with the determination and the unity amongst the Palestinian community is what is maintaining us to be able to remain more solid behind it. We do hear people getting visits, so now and then being asked by the Israel for support. But we're very clear that that doesn't stand in our way and our determination to show our support, because they've been with us in the struggle and we've been together, and that means it holds us very high. Your condition as Palestinians is our condition, and we'll be able to work with them until they resolve the problem in Israel and Palestine.
Thank you so much, Comrade Nyami Booi. Deputy Minister?
No, thank you very much, moderator. July is known as the month dedicated to the founding father of the South African nation, Nelson Mandela. Our immediate reference point, Bram, for this type of debate is when Nelson Mandela said that our freedom as South Africans is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. That message underpins our posture and our attitude as the South African government as it relates to the plight of the Palestinian people. I wish to supplement that, Bram, that at all times we have been known to err on the side of the vulnerable. So if history must judge the South African government, it should always look at it to have erred on the side of the vulnerable. Because that is what we mean when we say we see ourselves as a South African people as being proponents of human rights. And a central pillar of human rights is social justice, Bram. And what we are today discussing and making a substantive commitment is that our freedom will never be complete up until there's social justice for the people of Palestine, up until the Palestine has the same rights like South Africans, up until the land dispossession process has been reversed. It is the same land dispossession process in regards to our 1913 Land Act that we are seized with today as a government. Our message, of course, apart from using the different multilateral forums and working with the African Union and other sister organizations in Africa, is that we do see, Ambassador, a very important role for what we call the Middle East Quartet, which comprise of the Russian Federation. It comprises of the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations. And I think it will be important that we use our various presence in the different countries, and in particular at the multilateral level, to actually implore the Middle East Quartet to urgently seek to have substantive discussions with the state of Israel. And I'm raising it, Bram, because we cannot go to bed when we know that our inaction will result in the creation of a Palestine Bantustan. We had experience in South Africa about the consequent outcome of Bantustan type of education. And that is not a future that is predictable, that is certain, that we can wish for the people of Palestine. I think as we conclude, we of course, as the South African government, will continue to hold the world to account. You know that we have been consistent during our 2 years of tenureship as a member of the United Nations Security Council to be very consistent about this matter. And an important discussion that your organization and everyone else should start to have is the reform of the United Nations in accordance to the Eswelweni Consensus and the Surti Declaration, where we are of an affirmative view as the South African government and as Africa, Bram, that the veto right of the P5, we should probably look at that. We should find expression and have at least 2 permanent Security Council seats from the side of Africa. And I'm raising it because you can have 14 members of the United Nations Security Council that can agree that there's certain action that must be instituted against the state of Israel. But if one member of the P5 execute their veto right, you will then have a continuation of a grievance at the level of the United Nations General Assembly, etc. So the key debate as we take forward this plight of the Palestine people is the reform of the United Nations Security Council. And secondly, and a very important submission I want to make, Comrade Bram, is how do we regard the International Criminal Court as a reliable ally advancing the plight of the Palestine people? And I'm raising it within the context that as we're speaking, the ICC actually have agreed to probe at the diagnostic level the misconduct as it relates to the people of Palestine. And those are the two contemporary debates that I hope will not fall off our key pedestal as we move forward, because I've raised it, we need to start to do things differently as opposed to the past. And the UN Security Council and the ICC is probably two avenues substantively that we need to engage on. Thank you very much, Comrade Moderator, and thank you very much. I also want to say thank you very much to Comrade Nyami Booi, who is the Deputy President of the South African Youth Congress, SAICO, and Ambassador. He was part of the Lions of OR Tambo, which said, let's render the country ungovernable. And our freedom, we pay it to a generation such as that of Comrade Nyami Booi, but it must give certainty that freedom or death, there will ultimately be a possible reality for the people of Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister and Comrade Nyami Booi. Again, it's been a great honor to host you all. I think it would be necessary to ask the Ambassador of Palestine to come in now. Just before that, though, I think something activists like ourselves will need to think of, especially those in civil society and those in various structures, would be the role of the ICC, whether a previous view of leaving the ICC is the best decision. So we're always open to revisit issues as activists. So I think the importance of the ICC for human rights needs to be considered, and we might need to look at that as activists going forward. Ambassador.
Thank you, comrades, for the nice final remarks. And I would love to take over from where Comrade Botes stopped. We need to start to do things differently. This is the backbone of the whole discussion now, because we've been doing things the same routine for more than 25 years without any result. I think now we need to stop statements, rhetoric actions, and we need to move into concrete actions. And actually, even as South, we can do it because we have everything, and we can move in the right direction for supporting Palestine. I want to assure you, Comrade Booi, that Palestine is united. The community, the Palestinian community, is very much united because we are smart enough to know who's our real enemy. It's true that there is division between Fatah and Hamas, but it's a division that has been created and reinforced by the Israeli occupation. The Israeli occupation is the major problem. It's not the internal division. It's normal that any political faction or any political body or inside any country, that there is division between the two parties. And in some countries and in most of the countries, it is an internal issue and it is played down. In Palestine, it is highlighted because US and Israel wants the international community to focus on it, to move the light away from the main issue, which is the occupation. I assure you that the Palestinians are knowing their own enemy. And when we are talking about Fatah and Hamas, we are talking about the same family. Maybe one member is Fatah and the other is Hamas. So this is not the problem. The issue and the problem that we need to bring an end to is colonial expansionist project of Israel that will not stand only for Palestinians. If it had the chance, it will expand more and more. I would love to thank you all, and I would love to let's talk about not to talk, but I want to make a remark to the Troika +1 or the quartet formula. Actually, we were trying as Palestinians to maybe expand it to become Troika Plus, so that would enable other countries like South Africa, who had a really great experience in fighting apartheid, to want as much as of countries and states that might support progressive and other countries that abide by human rights to come to this Troika Plus, so that they can join. They can really, we need to do things in a different manner. It's time to put an end to US being the one and the only broker for a peace that has never been achieved yet. So I think we are moving into the momentum who will bring everyone together, so that we can bring an end to this Israeli occupation. Again, I salute you in the name of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian government for your great effort standing and backing up the Palestinian people. Thank you, and thank you, Africa for Palestine, for arranging such a wonderful webinar.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Colleagues, we have a young activist and volunteer who works with Africa for Palestine, who's been helping us with the technical work. She's a feminist, she's a Palestinian. I would like her to do the vote of thanks, and I would like her to maybe give us a little insight from the youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Bram, for passing it along to me. My name is Abir Kawas, and I'm an intern at Africa for Palestine. I've been blessed to be part of this organization as I'm a student here in South Africa. And I wanted to do kind of a wrap up of the points that were made and highlight some things, and then just give a message of gratitude. So thank you to the Palestinian ambassador Hanan Jarar for amplifying the voices of Palestinians at this moment. What is really going on internally in Palestine, and how are Palestinians responding? And one thing that you specifically asked for from South Africans is the continuation of the mobilization. And I think that's a very, very important point to highlight. And I want to thank Comrade Nyami Booi, who throughout this talk kept on emphasizing the commitment to this continued mobilization from South African activists who worked against apartheid and did not see that this work is over, but see this work continued with the liberation of Palestinians, with the continued support for Palestinians. The mobilization continues until everybody is liberated. So thank you for that message, Comrade. And then lastly, thank you to Deputy Minister Alvin Botes, just for expressing the solidarity and the commitment and support of the South African government to Palestine. I think as a Palestinian, and I'm actually somebody who grew up in the United States, it's just so amazing and inspiring to see the commitment and the clarity of the South African government to support Palestinians. This is something that we don't even see from the most progressive factions in the United States, in the center of empire. So to see that the South African government is continuing to put pressure on the entire world, especially through places like the UN in these contested spaces, is just so thrilling for us as Palestinians. So I want to thank you all for this for this conversation and for showing up for Palestinians on this day of rage, on this, simultaneously extremely tragic moment as the continued colonization and land annexation and just the taking away of the humanity of Palestinians continues. But things like this remind us that they will not win, and that there is a larger body, an international body that is committed to the liberation of Palestinians and to the reclamation of not just only our land, but our humanity. So thank you all on behalf of Africa for Palestine. We hope you all have a good night. And thank you for all of the audience members who tuned in with us and continue to come to all of our events and are supporting our organization. So thank you all. And I'm gonna say it one last time, so get ready. Amandla.
Away. You'll have to do it one more time when we're unmuted.
Okay, one more time. Amandla.
Away.
Okay, great. All right.
Answer.
Good night.
Thanks, Bram.
Good night.